Now, of course, senior writer for ESPN, the magazine. Give us more details from what went on in that meeting. Let's go back to the very beginning. How did that day actually get started for both sides?
Well, it was 2 days. So the first day was a players and owners meeting that Goodell personally selected the owners who would attend. And he decided that Jerry Jones should not attend because he had taken such a hardline stance and has a tendency to kind of take over meetings. And I think it was a good meeting. I think the thing that was the most interesting in talking to many participants in that room that Don and I did is that Roger separated himself from other league executives and from a lot of owners in terms of having a lot of empathy for the player's position. There's numerous times in the meeting where he told the owners, look, you're not hearing what they're saying. And I thought that the players thought that was really interesting because, you know, they feel like they're fighting all these headwinds.
Right.
And here was Roger, who they felt like was on their side even more than some of his own executives and more than the owners.
Because typically the commissioner is seen as a mouthpiece for the owners, but in that regard, as you're reporting, he sided more with the players in a couple of instances. Speaking of the owners, Texans owner Bob McNair, he made some controversial comments during that meeting that did not sit well with some of the players there. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, that was the day after. So there was an owners-only meeting the day after. You know, Jerry Jones was kind of the main star of that meeting, trying to make sure that the other owners knew that there are real-time business consequences that the NFL is facing right now. McNair got up and he said, we can't let the inmates run the prison. And it was one of a couple moments that sort of felt cringeworthy. Now, McNair and Troy Vincent, one of the NFL's executives, was very offended by that and got up and spoke later. McNair felt horrible about that. He apologized to Troy Vincent. You know, he released a statement today apologizing. But again, I think that one owner put it to me, he said, like, look, most of the owners want to be supportive, but they don't necessarily know how. And the meetings were kind of marked by better dialogue between the players and the owners in the league and these sort of cringeworthy moments.
You mentioned the apology from Bob McNair. Let's show you that statement in its entirety where he said, quote, I regret that I used that expression. I never meant to offend anyone, and I was not referring to our players. I used a figure of speech that was never intended to be taken literally. I would never characterize our players or our league that way, and I apologize to anyone who was offended by it. All right, which player, Seth, impressed the owners the most in that meeting?
In the players-owners meeting, that's really interesting. You know, Anquan Boldin was one that I think impressed them a lot, even though there was another kind of cringeworthy moment. You know that emoji where it's like this? You know, that's what it was like. Where Terry Pagula, the Bills owner, kept mispronouncing Anquan's name and told him he would be a good spokesman for this because he was black. And there couldn't be a white owner who was the spokesman. So again, he was intending to compliment Anquan, but it was a little cringeworthy. But I think that you know, some of the Jets players were really interesting. And I think that the thing about that meeting was that by the end of it, it had run long. And Robert Kraft was sitting next to two Jets players, and he said, you know, can we just effing end this thing? And, you know, the Jets players laughed. And I think that they felt like that was, even though the meeting kept going, I think they felt like that was a really positive sign that here was the owner of the Patriots and his arch-rival players are laughing at his joke.
You know, the expectation going into those meetings in New York last week were that the owners were going to come out with some type of mandate for the players regarding the playing of the national anthem before games. That did not happen, though. Why didn't it happen?
Because Jerry couldn't get the support for it. You know, and Roger gave him a night to try to round up support for it, and Jerry couldn't do it. And look, there are business issues facing the NFL that go beyond this anthem issue. And Jerry felt like that he was showing more urgency about those issues than other owners. And so he got up and he spoke and he said, I'm the ranking owner in this room to his peers. And he tried to deliver a reckoning. As it turned out, I think the reckoning was kind of put off.
We'll see what happens next because there's supposed to be a meeting next week again between players and owners, although there's some reporting that it may not happen. We'll see how it plays out, but great insight from Seth Wickersham. And again, you can read that right now on ESPN.com. You can also see it in the latest issue of ESPN, the magazine. Seth Wickersham, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.